To talk more about Russia's latest war tactics in Ukraine. Obviously, this is something that, again, President Biden focused on squarely during a State of the Union. Retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton joining us once again in studio. You've got to talk to me about this. I think a lot of the American people are wondering, when we're told that Russia is taking over more Ukrainian cities, what does it mean that they're taking control?
Well, right now, they're striving to take control of the cities, as you mentioned, especially in Kharkiv to the east, which is largely a Russian-speaking city. But it also indicates to me, and I believe to our national security leaders, that Putin and the Russian military are really bogged down. They're still off their timeline. And so now they're going to raise the game of terror, if you will, in terms of now indiscriminate bombing of civilians. Kharkiv is a population of 1.4 million people. Think about the size of San Diego. And like the citizens in Kharkiv, they're also not only isolated, but they're stuck. They're bogged down, the civilians. They've gone after neighborhoods. They've gone after other civilian targets with indiscriminate use of air power now because that long line of convoy coming to relieve Kyiv, now focused to the east in terms of Kharkiv, it's all still a slugfest for Putin. And so he has other options on the table which are more and more terrorizing to the civilian population.
You and I were talking in a break that the Putin of today could be a totally different man than we saw when Putin was dealing with different administrations.
Yeah, Adrienne, we have streams of intelligence and backdrops on Putin for several years. Today, the fact that my sources tell me he's becoming, and in the media, he's becoming more and more isolated. He's becoming more and more indiscriminate with the use of his military power and so forth. And so the lead effort right now within the intelligence community is try to understand what is that gap of the Putin yesterday and the Putin today, particularly as he becomes more isolated. Who now has become even a closer inner circle to him because his generals have to this point failed him because of the position of the army forces on the ground, having to do this extraordinary lifeline of a resupply with that convoy and so forth. And so we're really trying to understand what is his state of mind right now. Condoleezza Rice, over the weekend, she mentioned, and she's dealt with Putin for a number of years. She says he is really showing signs of erratic behavior and signs of really some intrigue that she had never encountered with him before.
When it comes to the mission and what Russia is telling their troops, you know, we had these text messages revealed from the UN ambassador for Ukraine, reading them aloud. A Russian soldier texting his mother before he was killed that he was scared, that they're being called fascists. Was there some guise, quite possibly? Are you getting any intelligence reporting on a guise possibly sent to the troops of Russia, that they were going on for humanitarian means only to incite what looked like a war started by Ukraine? And
again, it's all part of a psychological campaign, not only against the Ukrainian people, but now inside his military as well. This is the first war that, you know, is now, although the war in Syria, you would say, is social media, but in terms of those releases of information that can be transmitted in seconds, even from a soldier in a convoy to back home to his family, is now huge news. And it's indicating that, again, the Russian military, the forces on the ground are bogged down. But again, this is day 7. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And it's an extraordinary time for the Ukrainian people and the military, the Ukrainian military, but they are standing and fighting. President Zelensky is standing and fighting. The citizens of Ukraine are standing and fighting, and the NATO alliance remains very, very unified in supporting Ukraine as best we possibly can.
Well, and NATO allies of the U.S. are all banding together, the EU increasing sanctions. These were initially used as a deterrent in hopes of actually having peace and preventing war, but now they're being used as a judgment on Russia. How will this lead to peace?
Well, the deterrence aspect of the economic sanctions, as we talked about a couple days or so ago, have not been effective. And so right now there are other tools in the national security toolkit. There's diplomatic, there's economic, there's finance information, and military and so forth. All tools still need to be employed. And the tools that we have as leading NATO are certainly along the lines of the financial economic that the president mentioned last night in the State of the Union, but also the fact that we're still sending more and more troops to Europe to bolster our NATO defenses should that the war break out beyond Ukraine, but also to provide that confidence to the NATO allies that the United States is going to be out front and leading. So they're I guess really there are very few options at this point.
There are very few options. I think that's the bottom line. Of course, we're going to have you in our next hour answering some of our viewers' questions as we continue to talk about this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.